When you look at global finance, it just feels like this huge, impossibly complex machine, right? But what if I told you it has architects? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most influential ones out there, Morgan Stanley. And this quote, it really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It's not just money moving the world. It's decisions. Think about it. Behind every single big merger you read about, or every wild swing in the market, it's not just some abstract force or a bunch of algorithms. It's people. Real people making choices that literally shape the economic world we live in.
And that's really what we're focusing on today. Because in the middle of all that chaos, there are these institutions that are actually designed for the exact opposite. They're built to create order, to cut right through the noise. They're all about precision.
So let's start with these unseen architects, the people who are actually building these financial structures, usually way behind the scenes.
Okay, so to really get a handle on Morgan Stanley, you have to go back to the very beginning. And what's wild is, this firm wasn't born during some big boom time. Nope, it was literally forged in the fire of a massive global crisis.
This timeline really tells the whole story. So first, you have the 1929 crash, right? And it just completely shatters everyone's trust in the markets. Then, the government steps in with new rules that basically split the banking world in half. But right there, in that split, Henry Morgan and Harold Stanley saw a huge opportunity. Their idea wasn't just, hey, let's start another business. It was much bigger. They wanted to build an institution so focused, so disciplined, that it could actually start to rebuild people's faith in the whole system again.
And get this, the impact was immediate. In their very first year of business, this new firm grabbed a staggering 24% of all U.S. IPOs. That's not just some number on a spreadsheet. That's proof. Proof that the market was absolutely desperate for exactly what they were offering. Trust.
So how does a firm like this actually work? Well, you can think of it as being built on three main pillars. These are the foundations that hold up everything they do in the global economy.
All right, first up, you've got investment banking. This is kind of like the architectural blueprint phase. We're talking about advising huge corporations and even governments on their biggest, most critical decisions. Like going public, buying a competitor, or completely shaking up an industry. This is where the big money moves start, all based on some seriously deep analysis and strategy.
Okay, pillar number 2, markets and securities. So if investment banking is the blueprint, you can think of this as the circulatory system. It's what keeps the blood, or in this case, the capital, flowing. Morgan Stanley operates in markets all over the world, making sure there's liquidity, which is just a fancy way of saying money can move around easily. And the real key here, it's not about trying to predict the future. No way. It's about being prepared for any future through some really intense risk management.
And that brings us to the third pillar, which shifts the focus from these giant institutions down to the individual level, wealth management. The game here isn't about quick wins or short-term trades, not at all. It's all about stewardship, helping families protect and grow their money for the long haul. We're talking decades, even generations. This is the side of finance where patience is everything.
So you can really see the two sides of the coin here, right? On one hand, they're architecting these massive multi-billion-dollar deals for corporations. And on the other, they're helping a family build a legacy that will last. The scale is completely different, but the foundation for both, it's exactly the same. Trust and responsibility.
But listen, just because you have a strong foundation doesn't mean you're safe from the storm. So the big question is, how is this whole structure held up against all the modern challenges? I'm talking about everything from crazy new technology to, a full-blown financial meltdown.
Let's be real. Finance today is all about data. The firm is using everything. We're talking algorithmic trading systems, AI checking for compliance, you name it. But here's the crucial point. All that tech, it's just a tool. It's not a substitute for human responsibility. Because when things inevitably go wrong, you can't automate accountability. That has to stay with a person.
And speaking of tests, there has been no bigger test in our lifetime than the 2008 financial crisis. This was the ultimate storm, the kind that threatened to take down the entire global system.
First, the markets just collapsed.
Then, liquidity, it just vanished.
And finally, the most important thing of all, confidence, completely evaporated.
Morgan Stanley was pushed right to the very edge, but they made it through. And the lesson that came out of all that wreckage from 2008 was crystal clear. Being big isn't enough to save you. Discipline is what saves you. It was just a brutal, painful reminder that staying alive in that world comes down to decisive leadership and a relentless focus on risk. So what is it then? What's the blueprint that lets an institution like this actually last? Well, it goes way beyond just financial models and spreadsheets. It's baked right into the culture of the place. And this leads to a really powerful idea, that the culture itself is a type of currency. Things like integrity, always being aware of risk, putting clients first. These aren't just feel-good words you stick on a poster in the break room. In an industry where your reputation is literally everything, that culture becomes your most critical survival tool.
So, where do we go from here? What's next? Well, the only thing we can guarantee is more uncertainty. Markets are going to change, technology is going to get faster, and you can bet there will be another crisis. It's never a question of if, it's always a question of when.
And all of this brings us to one last really important question. If you can't predict the future, what can you rely on? What's the one asset that holds its value no matter how crazy things get?
It's perspective. Simple as that. The ability to step back and see the big picture, to have a sense of history, and to make decisions based not on panic, but on careful preparation. When you think about it, it just might be the most valuable asset there is.